How do you win every team fight in Deadlock? It's simple. You can't. Dota players have this old saying. You can only affect the outcome of a game 60% of the time, because 20% of the time, your teammates will just carry, and the other 20% of the time, your teammates are so bad, it does not matter how well you play. And after playing around 100 hours of Deadlock, I can definitely agree with that statement. However, what I can teach you is how to win every game that falls into that 60% category. See, this advice may become a little outdated in a couple years as the game's meta will naturally progress. But currently, this is definitely the difference between winning and losing. And I think if even half of any of my random teammates that I've had knew any of this information, or at least just listened to me when I tried to tell them, like, yo, buy debuff remover, we have a pocket on the enemy team, right? Like, we would just win, like, so many more games. See, the answer to winning every team fight is, I kind of just alluded to it, but it's active items. These things are so busted. You can counter an entire team comp with 1 or 2 actives. If they have a Lash and Vindicta, buy knockdown. Bebop and pocket, debuff remover. Shiv and Abrams, decay. It's really that easy. These heroes get shut down so easily by these items that I genuinely do not know how no one seems to know this information. I find myself constantly begging my teammates to buy actives. Like, oh, there's a Vindicta, guys, buy knockdown. They don't do it. They just don't. And I have these types of games where it's like buy decay, there's an Abrams, right? Buy toxic bullets. I had to beg an Infernus the other day to buy toxic bullets, right? Because the Abrams is fed as hell, he's got 40,000 souls, and then the Infernus has the gall, the audacity to say that I, Paradox, am negative. I'm literally 1-7 and I have 16 assists. People are just so bad at this game because they hear that it's a hero shooter, it's not, and they just pick a random build that's popular and rigidly stick to it rather than buying the right items against the right opponents. Which is why you are already a 10 times better teammate just by getting this far into this video, so I'm proud of you. With that being said, let's break down the roster and what active items you want to buy to counter them. Quick disclaimer, this is obviously all my opinion. You should feel free to disagree with me in the comments if you like, or, I don't know, make a 12-hour hate post about me. I bring that up because I saw someone do that once and it was really weird. Second disclaimer, Deadlock's obviously in early beta stages right now and therefore subject to heavy balance changes every week, meaning that this information could be heavily outdated in just a month's time. However, the central idea of counter buying your items against enemy heroes is still just a very strong idea. And because the core idea of the heroes probably aren't really going to change that much within, all of Deadlock's lifespan, that I think that this advice will still be, accurate. So going in alphabetical order, because that's how they appear on the hero list, I'm starting with Abrams. Abrams relies heavily on lifesteal to keep him sustained. Lifesteal did just get a pretty massive nerf in the latest patch notes, as it now stacks diminishingly, but I believe that Abrams can still be pretty powerful still at this point. Therefore, the best way to counter Abrams is to deny lifesteal. Obviously, I mentioned it earlier, but decay is only 1.25 thousand souls, which makes it very accessible in the early game, right? And it reduces healing by 50%. Which is really nice because it's got a really long duration on that. And it's more than enough time to burst him down. It's also auto-aim, and it's got a fair enough cast range that you can absolutely get it on. Toxic Bullets is not an active item, and I know this video is supposed to be about actives, but they are way too strong against Infernus, against Abrams and Infernus, actually. He's a lifesteal character as well. But first of all, Infernus should always have Toxic Bullets. It doesn't matter if there's an Abrams on the other team or not, right? But Toxic Bullets also reduce heals and deal dot. It's very nice against Abrams. And finally, Knockdown is an extremely powerful active item in general. It's probably one of the best. I would put it in S tier if I was making a list, right? It's also only 3,000 souls, which I think it's crazy. I'm so surprised it's not 6,200. But if this is true for a lot of hero ults, but knockdown can knock Abrams out of the sky if he's in his ult, if you cast it at the right time. If he's in his drain, you can just knock him down and let your teammates reset and get out of there first, and then you can light him up once his drain's down. It's just so satisfying to hit this on someone and to just absolutely delete them. Next up is Bebop. He really only requires you to buy items to counter him, specifically if he's going for a bomb build, because if he's going for an ult build, you can kind of just get out of the way. He turns slowly. Like, his ult can be strong, but only if it's comboed with other heroes' annoying abilities. So some of the items that you're going to need for Bebop, the first one is Reactive Barrier, also not an active, but if Bebop's main mission seems to be hooking you, then Reactive Barrier is great for this, obviously, because you're just instantly going to get that Spirit Shield up, and you know, you can basically ignore the bomb in the early stages, which is really the time where Reactive Barrier is the most powerful anyways. Ethereal Shift is next up. It's slightly worse Yamato ult, which makes sense because Yamato ult, I don't know if it's Yamato or Yamato. It makes sense because hers is an ult, and this is just an item for 3,000. And this is really strong because you can just deny Bebop the stacks on his bomb, which now you can diminish slightly by killing him, by the way. You can just deny him the stacks on the bomb by not taking the damage. You also get to not take the damage, and you can ignore some other ult effects and some other annoying things. Finally, Debuff Remover is not what I would buy against Bebop. I think Shift is enough against Bebop, A, and B, I feel like it's kind of a waste unless the enemy team has a pocket, in which case then it's actually really nice. Because it's just, I don't think Bebops are going to have their bombs up that often where it really begs Debuff Remover. If he's being a Lash hole, right, then you can go for it. Like, this works. It does remove the bomb. But I just think there are better items, like Ethereal Shift. Next up is Dynamo. He obviously doesn't need that much of a counter, but his Singularity is really good for initiating fights, that if the enemy team are really good at playing around his Singularity, you might want to buy one of these items. First up is Ethereal Shift. I haven't actually tried this personally. There's a lot of items on this list that I haven't tried this because I haven't needed to. And Ethereal Shift against Dynamo is one of them. But if you see a Dynamo sprinting towards you, it's usually because he wants to ult you. You can keep track, actually, of what abilities he has in the top. The little circle under his head is how much abilities he has. It doesn't show you which specific abilities, but if it's like half the bar, then you know that he doesn't have his ult, right? And if the thing is full, then he obviously has his ult. Next up is Rescue Beam. This Rescue Beam, I actually also haven't tried against Dynamo ult. But I don't see any reason why it shouldn't work, because Rescue Beam is, you cast it on a teammate, obviously, and then pull them out of the ult. This one's more if you just want to be a good teammate rather than get out of there. I see, like, most people do not use Rescue Beam. I want to point this out, that you don't see Rescue Beam unless it's on, like, an Ivy, a Kevin, or a Dynamo, right? Those are the only people who are going to use it because they're like, well, I'm a support. Obviously, I'm going to buy the support item. The Rescue Beam is really, really strong. It basically instantly heals 26% of max health. It's a 2.5 second duration for the max health, and I think that is absolutely ridiculous, right? And if that's not enough, you can just pull people out of ults. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what? And no one uses this. It's insane to me. And it's only 3,000 souls, and I don't understand how we don't see it more often. Unstoppable, it makes you immune to stun, right? And Dynamo's ult is a stun, so you can just... It's the same thing with Ethereal Shift, right? You just, if you see a Dynamo running towards you, pop Unstoppable, then just melt him down. Or, well, I would get out of the radius of his ult first, because you only have Unstop for, like, 4 seconds, I think. So, yeah. Finally, Curse. If you have like half your team caught in the singularity, you can just cancel it with Curse. Curse automatically interrupts most abilities, and it's just really strong in general. It is a 6,200 soul item, so it makes sense that it's strong. But, you know, if the enemy Dynamo is just that goated, you might want to rush that. Grey Talon is just a flying Lash hole. This is just not a good hero, you guys. Like, he's a gimp hero for one-trick ponies, like Vindicta players or Mcginnis players, and they all suck because none of these heroes are good. Obviously, Vindicta's the best out of the three of them, but that doesn't make any of them good, right? So, what you always want to do against flyers, that's Lash, Vindicta, Talon, and it's Lash, Vindicta, and Talon. I guess technically Pocket, but I don't talk about that. I don't talk about him in this one. I mean, I don't give knockdown to the Pocket counter. And knockdown is by far the best counter to any of the flyers. It just knocks these guys out of the air and they don't know what to do. Like, they just run around trying to leave immediately, and you can just always punish them for that. Return Fire is also usable if you really don't want to buy knockdown for some reason. I don't know why. Like, why would you not buy knockdown? I'm pretty sure they're both 3,000 souls, right? But this is an alternative, I suppose. This one's more of a theory because I've literally never not bought knockdown before. But let's say you need the Spirit Slot for some reason, right? Then this should discourage a Talon from hitting you with that squishier health pool that he has. Especially with that, like, shotgun shot. This should theoretically work. I wouldn't know, but it's more of a discouragement than a hard counter. Next up is Haze. Her Sleep Dagger can be annoying, and her ult can be annoying with that evasion, but honestly, I don't know. She doesn't feel that oppressive to play against. Like, if she is always killing me, it feels fair, you know? Like, I don't feel like I'm getting outplayed. I don't feel like... I do feel like I'm getting outplayed. I don't feel like, you know, some of these other heroes when I'm not buying items against them, where it feels just straight up unfair, like post Lifesteal nerf Abrams. Reactive Barrier is obviously a good item against Haze for her Sleep Dagger. This is true against anyone who does stuns, just in general, by the way. I don't know if I mention it again. I don't know if I mentioned this about every character who's stunned. But it's just a good thing to keep in mind that Reactive Barrier, like, ooh, that person stuns, Reactive Barrier, right? Especially in early game, especially if you're laning against one of these people, right? That's immediately what you want to buy. First what you want to buy every time is extra health, extra regen. Like, there's just no reason not to be buying those items. They're way too strong right now. Warpstone, if you find yourself getting dropped in on by Haze ults, first of all, that's a skill issue, right? If she just is surprising you every time, that's absolutely a skill issue. But this can be usable to escape situations like this. Again, I don't really think that Haze is, like, you know, unfair without items built against her. But the idea about some of these, because obviously if I'm going over the entire cast, there's going to be some characters where it's just like, they're not really that oppressive, right? Like, I don't need to build against them. So the idea is when these when these heroes are too fed that you need to start building against them because your team keeps feeding and you need some form of counterplay. This is the idea, right? So Warpstone out of Haze ult, I don't know. You can also do this with Ethereal Shift or Metal Skin. Metal Skin, since Haze ult is fully bullet damage, right? And Metal Skin just makes you immune to bullet damage, you literally just win. You win against her ult, right? But again, I don't actually have that many problems against Haze ult personally. I don't know, I think it's kind of a skill issue. Finally, Curse is also a good way to just shut down Haze ult, because as I mentioned, teammates tend to be so bad at this game, and you can beg them to buy Metal Skin, you can beg them to buy debuff remover, right? But they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it, right? And let's say you want to win team fights despite your team being garbage, right? Buy Curse, shut down Haze ult. It's just that easy. Next up is Infernus. He has really good sustainability because of his lifesteal, right? Again, that did get nerfed, so we're going to see how that plays out in the next couple, games, or not games, as the meta progresses. Obviously, we're also getting ranked next week, which is going to be huge. They did also actually directly nerf Infernus, although I don't really think they were that huge nerfs. I think he shouldn't really be too high priority at the moment because of these lifesteal nerfs, but I don't know. Maybe lifesteal is just still that crazy. So either way, here are some ways to counter Infernus. Decay. Yeah, it's just Decay. Reduce healing by 50%. Infernus is a lifesteal character. You bring Decay. Same thing with Toxic Bullets. That's really the two ideas I have here. You can also do Curse to just stop his ult, I suppose. And Phantom Strike would also work to... Well, actually, I think Phantom Strike would just be really funny against Infernus in lots of ways. You're going to hear, a lot of active items being repeated in this list because they are just that good, okay? There are some items that are, a lot more specific, like Metal Skin for Haze. There's, two characters I would say Metal Skin about. It's Haze and Wraith, right? And that's it. Next up is Ivy. She's a support, so as I mentioned, there are going to be characters that, just don't need that many direct characters. She's one of them. She has, an okay gun. And Kudzu is, super annoying. It comes out super fast, it slows you, and it deals a surprising amount of damage. So the Kudzu is annoying, and that's really it. So Decay is something I would use, because she does heal herself with her 2, and she heals her teammates with her 2. And, but it's not, the craziest, right? I guess you could bring Knockdown as well, because she does fly, so... And Knockdown's great against every flying character. It's still true. Phantom Strike, I was just talking about that with Haze, right? With Infernus. Because Phantom Strike silences people. It kind of panics people, too. You're right there. They're disarmed. They're silenced, right? They can't do anything. You're dealing damage to them, right? It tends to send people, away. It's they get scared, right? And Phantom Strike is the only thing I can think of against Ivy, because really, you don't really see that many fed Ivies, because she's a support. She doesn't get fed that often, right? So the idea here was, maybe she's a bit slippery, because she has her stone form where she just goes completely invulnerable, right? And ignores most stuns, but you can just, if you want to gank her, for example... You hit a Phantom Strike, then your team dives on her, and then she's dead, and she can't get away, and she can't do anything. That's pretty much all I could think of for Ivy. She's really not a character that you need a hard counter for. Kevin sucks. I almost called him Kelvin, which is not his name. It's Kevin. He's another healer, so Decay, always Decay. And then, secondly, Curse. Curse to shut down his dome if you want to kill him. Or teammates, if you want to stop him from healing his teammates. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if you can curse him from outside the dome. But if you're inside the dome, because, the dome stops projectiles, and I don't know if curse counts as a projectile. But if you're in the dome, you can absolutely curse him and shut down the dome. Lady Geist is someone who... I sometimes think about when I'm building counter builds, right? Because she's one of the riskiest heroes to take in a duel if you don't keep your distance, right? Because obviously her ult allows her to just instantly get rid of all of your health if you're not careful. So that's why the first one is Phantom Strike again. Same idea with Ivy. Just get her low, and then get in with Phantom Strike and kill her before she can ult you, so that you don't take that damage, and then you just win, right? Silencer is the same idea. Silence Glyph, same idea, right? Me personally, I would go with Phantom Strike because it's better. It's a vitality item. It gives you more health. I don't tend to build vitality items. It depends, obviously on who I'm playing, right? But because I play a lot of Paradox and Lash, I'm not really thinking that much about the vitality items other than just what's in the regular build and who I'm counter building against. Is there You know, is there a pocket and an Infernus on the team? Great, improved spirit armor, right? Like that's really as much as the vitality part of my build goes in terms of big brain. So that's why I like Phantom Strike a lot, right? I just also think it's stronger than Silencer and Silence Glyph. I don't like the idea of Silencer because you have to hit it and then hit your bullets. And then Silence Glyph is literally just a 3,000 item, so it's not as, it's just not as great. That's by design because it's cheaper, which does mean it is a good option in earlier game, right? So if you're having a hard mid-game phase, right, and you want to contest a Lady Geist, Silence Glyph is still a good option. Next is Lash. No one messes with the Lash. I'm a Lash enjoyer. But Knockdown absolutely messes with the Lash. Yeah, I mean, he's a flyer, obviously. Although he's a weird one of the flyers, right? Because obviously he's nothing like Vindicta or Grey Talon, because instead of being an annoying little lash hole, well, he is a lash hole, right? But instead of being annoying like they are, like flying up in the sky and being too much of a coward to like hurt people, like in close quarters, like he doesn't. Like you're just getting outplayed when you get deleted by a Lash, and I am saying that because I am a Lash main. Lashes will generally also build Majestic Leap, so you're definitely going to want Silencer, or at the very least slowing bullets just to slow him down a little bit, or just Paradox probably can just shut him down immediately with that. Knockdown obviously is it's a must against flyers. And finally, Curse. If you see Lash activating his ult, and if the enemy Lash just loves his ult a lot, Curse is the way to go. Just immediately shut it down. Save your entire enemy team. So, your entire teammates sometimes. Next up is Mcginnis, and she's basically what if Engineer from TF2 was more annoying or less annoying. I can't tell sometimes. Sometimes my teammates just let Mcginnis get so fed that, like, she's the worst part of their team, despite being the second worst character in the game. Which, that doesn't happen that much anymore, but definitely in early games, I would have way too many oppressive Mcginnises that just have, like, 60,000 souls for some reason, right? The only item I could think of against Mcginnis, because, again, she's really not that oppressive if your teammates aren't brain dead, was Alchemical Fire, just to get her turrets down faster, right? Because other than that, like, her wall's strong. I'm not gonna lie. Her wall is definitely my favorite part of her kit when I'm using her. But it's like it feels fair to play around. It's telegraphed, it's nice, like I feel like if you're really getting trapped by the wall that often, like, it's just a skill issue, right? Like, sometimes you'll get outplayed and stuck in a corner with the wall, right? But that was a skill issue too, because if you're playing against Mcginnis, you should know, like, oh, she can wall me. Like, just don't get into a position where you can get walled by Mcginnis. And her ult, I'm just not really that big of a fan of her ult. I'm not gonna lie, it's not that strong. It's very telegraphed, it's slow, it doesn't kill you in like 2 seconds, meaning you have so much time to react to it. Yeah, and it's super loud, so you always know what's happening. Mirage, I'm actually gonna skip because I obviously Mirage on release was busted, right? But now I actually think I have not played with a Mirage in the last 10 games. And that last 11th game, right? He was on my team and didn't do anything the whole match. So I have no data on this guy. I really do not know. So skipping Mirage, I'm going to Mo and Krill. These two are slippery little bastards with their 2, right? It's just annoying. Their pocket sand is also annoying, right? Their ult is frustrating because it can get you through walls, apparently, because they still haven't, fixed line of sight on everything. Because I've been comboed through an entire truck once, okay? But other than that, they're still actually not that oppressive. I mean, if they get a combo on you, like, you can be guaranteed dead, like, if even one of their teammates is around, right? Because the combo lasts for that long, and headshots deal that much damage. But, like, that's usually your fault for being out of position. So, getting wrecked by a Mo and Krill is definitely a skill issue. But anyways, Phantom Strike it's similar deal to Lady Geist. Deal damage to Mo and then close the distance with Phantom Strike, so they can't get away with a burrow, right? Then Debuff Remover. Personally, I wouldn't waste an activation of this item, but I'm just saying Debuff Remover for the passive minus 35% duration should just be able to get rid of that disarm, faster, which is nice. Obviously, I would never, and I'm not saying do this, like, do not see a Mo and Krill and immediately go, like, oh, time to use Debuff Remover. I'm just saying, like, if you see, like, a Bebop on the enemy team and you're, like, debating whether or not you should buy Debuff Remover or Ethereal Shift, and they also have Mo and Krill, and that Mo and Krill's being really annoying, then you can go, oh, okay, I will buy Debuff Remover because the Bebop's dealing good bombs, and Mo and Krill's good at being annoying with that Sandblast, right? Like, that would be a good time to use Debuff Remover. You need to remember that builds are kind of a scam in Deadlock because every match has an insane amount of nuance. It's not just buy all of this in that order and then you win. I mean, it can be, especially in the lower MMR brackets, but, like, as you get better at the game, you're like, oh, okay, I actually have to, like, be cognitioned, I have to wake up. Finally, Unstoppable. Combo's a stun move. Unstoppable makes you stun immune. It's that simple. After Mo and Krill is Paradox. Paradox can be really scary in the right hands because if she runs around with a carry in the mid game, she can get a pick like at least every other fight. Her 3 is pretty much an instant stun, but it doesn't count as a stun, so I don't think you can use Unstoppable against it. Also, if this is the mid game, you're not going to have Unstoppable, and you shouldn't rush it anyways because there are better items against Paradox, right? Like, especially if she hits you with the 3 and then Wraith or Haze or 7 or someone just lights you up with any of their abilities. You can just die immediately before anything even happens, and you didn't even get ulted on, right? Wraith and Haze Wraith, Haze, and 7, are particularly good combos with Paradox in that scenario specifically because they can then set up another stun and just do that to you again. Then, of course, there's the Paradoxical Swap, which is insanely strong for disrupting team fights and can basically guarantee the death of whomever is hit by the swap when Paradox has good teammates. And, I mean, I'm going to tell you how to beat that, obviously. So first up is Return Fire. This is good for the mid game, right? Especially because it's a 1.25 thousand soul item. So I'm talking about that same scenario where you get 3'd by a Paradox. Right before then, like if you hear the carbine sound, you go, oh, and then just activate Return Fire, right? Because if they stun you and then start shooting you, they also take a lot of damage back, which might be able to discourage them from shooting you more. Or what's more likely to happen is you don't die immediately, hopefully, because of the Spirit Shield, I believe, that Return Fire gives you. The Spirit and Bullet Shield, I believe, that is. Or perhaps it's just Bullet? No, it's both. It's both, right? And then you might be able to tank it with that and finish them off, or they'll be low enough where they don't want to follow you, especially if you're near a walker or something. Again, there's nuance. Next up is Rescue Beam. This obviously isn't much help to you if you're the one who gets swapped, but if you see someone get swapped, you can be an actual cognition teammate and pull them back before they get ganked. Except, as I mentioned, no one uses Rescue Beam for some reason. Like, it's just a really, really strong item. Finally is Ethereal Shift. This one is kind of more of just a game theory, because I don't go against that many Paradoxes, because I am the one who plays Paradox. And I guess just not many people have her top prio. But if your team is being, like, extra aggressive, right? let's say you get swapped, and then you pop your Ethereal Shift, and your entire team pushes, hopefully after punishing the Paradox swap, right? Your entire team pushes, and they're able to give you enough cover fire so that you aren't immediately killed by the thing by the enemy team once your shift runs out. Next up is Pocket. He's annoying only for his ult. I'm gonna be honest. I mean, his 3 is like annoying for area denial, but getting hit by his jacket is kind of just a skill issue. His 2 like doesn't exist. His 1 doesn't exist. Like, they're not oppressive, right? It's just his ult, and his ult is countered by debuff remover. It's a must buy against Pocket every time. There's a Pocket on the enemy team, we're getting debuff remover. You are throwing if you don't buy debuff remover. If the Pocket has 30,000 souls, buy debuff remover, or I'm reporting you. That's not true, obviously, but you are a terrible teammate if you don't buy debuff remover against Pocket. 7 is in a weird place in the meta right now. He just got another nerf and has been getting nerfs in the past couple patches. They nerfed his stun build, they nerfed his speed build, they nerfed his ball build, I think, which is crazy because his balls aren't even that good. I could be wrong about the ball build. But the other builds he did nerf. They did nerf, right? 7 is not that oppressive. He used to be really oppressive, right? Because his stun used to be super powerful. Now the channel is a bit longer on that, so it's not that important. There's definitely enough time to get behind cover now. His ult is also strong area denial, obviously. The most often you'll see a 7 is when he's in the sky at base, either base, really. Ethereal Shift is a good mid-range item to completely ignore his stun or his ult. Like if it's a early game ult that you just shift and you're done, right? I don't know, you probably won't want to keep the shift around for that long unless there's like a Bebop in the enemy team, a Dynamo, anyone else who I named shift on, right? Next up is Knockdown. It's so satisfying to knock an ulting 7 out of the air. I've won my team so many fights at base with this. This item is cheaper than Curse and is way more versatile to fighting most. Like, you can use Curse on 90% of the cast, and it's always an amazing item. It's so good for instantly shutting anyone down because it interrupts channeling, obviously. So you can easily punish an ulting 7 who got stunned, right, with your entire team, and like now they're down a 7, wasted his ult, and you have base. Finally, Curse, I just mentioned it. Sometimes you just want to immediately turn 7 ult off, right? Because Knockdown needs a couple seconds to knock down, right? And Curse will just immediately turn it off. It's sometimes like this might be more important than Knockdown if you have squishier teammates, for example. Like if the 7 ult is just going to immediately delete them, then you might need Curse instead. Again, nuance, but usually Knockdown's better. Shiv is another one of those high sustainability lifesteal heroes, but he can do a lot of damage from his rage if the fight goes on for too long, right? So you're going to want to stop him early. He's definitely a high priority target at the start of team fights, so that you can effectively counter him, right? So Decay, he's a lifesteal hero. You use Decay, you stop him from stealing life. Silence Glyph and Curse silence him. Curse's silence is the longest in the game. Its base is 3.5 seconds, stopping him from casting any of those scary strong abilities at max range. Phantom Strike, again, I love Phantom Strike, you can tell. You can silence him and disarm him, basically completely stopping him from building his range. His rage, this is for 3 seconds as opposed to Curse's 3.5, but Curse doesn't disarm, right? So I think Phantom Strike is probably the best option against Shiv. Because if he doesn't have max rage, then he's not nearly as scary. Like, he can still be bad. Like, his knives are annoying. Next up is Vindicta. She's a flyer. You use Knockdown. And then, if you really want to ruin Vindicta's day, also use Curse or Silencer or Silence Glyph. Just to immediately curse her on site. Even Phantom Strike as well, right? Because what you'll notice with Vindictas is if you've silenced them and then start dealing damage to you, whether it's burst or sustain, they're immediately going to try flying away from you once the silence is up, right? In which case, you just hit them with a knockdown, and then you just really ruin her day. Viscous, the goo dude is hard to counter because he's hard to play, right? He's not hard to counter because he's oppressive. He's hard to counter because you don't really know what the Viscous player is like going to do, because he has a lot of options available to him. His strength comes from sustainability in the form of his cube, movement in the form of his fist, pokes in the form of his fist, and stuns from his orb. Curse, I haven't actually tested this on his cube, but I have tested it on his orb, and I've tested other items on his orb, right? And you can affect orb version of Viscous, which is already very strong, and that would be a great option to buy Curse against anyways. But the way that Curse works is I could see it working against cube. At the very least, you could probably stop the cube channel if the Viscous places it on one of his teammates rather than himself. Next is Warpstone / Rescue Beam. If Viscous is really good at using his fist to put you or your teammates out of position, these are great items for just negating that. Warpstone gets you out of there, Rescue Beam gets your teammates out of there. It depends, what position that you're playing. Like, are you front line, back line, right? Something like that. The next hero is Warden. He has some lifesteal, but I honestly, barely ever die to last stand. I have to straight up not be paying attention because it has such a long startup, too. It's I think his ult needs a complete rework, personally. His jail, can be really annoying, though, if you can't get out in time, especially if you bring something like slowing bullets or knockdown to keep you in the circle long enough to jail you, in which case you can kind of just die because that's free headshots. Every good Warden should be bringing headshot booster or headhunter later in the game. That's just a fact. Decay, always decay against lifestealers. Obviously his ult's not that great, but if we're talking in the edge case where he's fed, this is probably still going to be super helpful. Ethereal Shift, it won't get you out of jail, but obviously you won't be able to take damage while you're in jail. This is in the edge case where you are stuck in jail. Magic Carpet is my last one here. This is an item that I never use. I have never used Magic Carpet. So this is going off vibes and what I read on the description of Magic Carpet, because no one ever uses Magic Carpet. But if Warden is 100% focusing you, he's always trying to jail you. If you're a Fed carry or Abrams, Haze, Wraith, I don't know, someone that's just going to be an insane thorn in their side, maybe you're even just a crazy Lash player, right? Then he might want to jail you first. And get his entire team to focus you. You might want Magic Carpet, because Magic Carpet makes you immune to stun. Immune to slow. It doesn't make you immune to stun, right? But it is pretty fast, and you can get up into the air with Magic Carpet as well, making you hard to hit. And that's kind of the idea, because other than that, there's not really a lot that you can do to counter jail directly. Obviously, there's Reactive Barrier, there's Warpstone, as I mentioned, and there's Rescue Beam, right? Those are all good options, but I think at this point, if you're at this part of the video, which is the recording's 39 minutes at this current moment, there's surely going to be a couple cuts, but if you made it this long, I think you know that at this point. You've probably gotten to the point where you hear me talk about Wraith jail, and you're Wraith jail, Warden jail, and you go Reactive Barrier, Warpstone, all the other things I mentioned, Rescue Beam. I really hope your first instinct was Rescue Beam. I would be so proud, first of all. Second of all, you would make such a great teammate. Please be my teammate. Next up is Wraith. Good Wraith players. I really have to enunciate that good part, because there are so many card build Wraiths, and they're just wrong for that, morally speaking. Good Wraith players will look to levitate you and then burst you down with full auto, spamming her cards when she can, right? Because that's the best way to play Wraith, is to ult them and then 3 them and then they're dead, right? Because she's got crazy lifesteal, she's got crazy magazine, she should have QSR on her 3, and then her one with theoretically improved burst if she's got enough spirit damage, right? And you're just dead. Like, you can't do a lot against that. Well, you can do this though. Ethereal Shift. I hope that was the first one you thought of. Maybe you thought of Reactive Barrier first. Reactive Barrier would be useful in early game, right? But I'm talking about, because active items, other than like Healing Right and Healing Nova, because the healing ones don't really tend to scale as well, other than Rescue Beam, because it's max health instead of just a flat number, right? Because the spirit and weapon items, they're pretty much useful for the entire game. They tend to be, right? So Ethereal Shift works, and that's why I put it on the main list rather than Reactive Barrier, although it still works against her, right? Ethereal Shift, just ignore her levitate. She becomes less oppressive. Again, this becomes slightly detrimental once Wraith ult is at max, because then she's going to start hitting your teammates as well. Like, yeah, I shifted, but now she's killing my dynamo. Whoops. That's why Curse is the next thing I want to mention. If she has max ult, right, then you probably have enough to get your Curse up. And if you curse her, then you can stop her from levitating anyone else, like not just you. And that makes you a better teammate. Now, are people going to recognize you for being such a good teammate? No. Like, with the very small exception of Rescue Beam, because that's the only one where people go like, oh, people, like, you actually helped me there, right? Like, no one's going to recognize that you hit knockdown. No one's going to recognize that you cursed or silence glyphed or phantom striked someone. People are going to recognize that. They're just going to be like, oh, that person died. That was weird. And then keep going, because these people are stupid. 90% of Deadlock players have 3 brain cells, and they're all fighting for 4th place. Sorry, I just got a little frustrated there. Because I feel like my efforts sometimes aren't recognized when I play Deadlock. Finally, for Wraith, Return Fire, an early game solution to a wandering Wraith who likes to gank and catch you out of position with her 4 and then 3. This is more like a maybe late mid game buy, obviously, because Reactive Barrier is still going to be useful up until early mid game, right? But Return Fire, again, as I said with the Paradox thing, you just kind of pop this and then they can't really hit you as much. Finally, the last hero on the list is Yamato. There's just nothing that oppressive about Yamato. I have literally never played against an oppressive Yamato, and when I've played her, like, she was okay, but like, I couldn't make her that strong, you know. I did fine. I did averagely, sometimes below averagely, right? And obviously I get that she's a high skill gap hero, right? And maybe we'll see more from her later, but the only thing I could really think of to build against Yamato was to build against her ult, because her ult's kind of annoying, you know, because she gets hard to kill, and that's why Silence Glyph, Curse, Silencer, and Phantom Strike were all of the actives that I thought of about this, because they all do the same thing, which silencers her abilities. Again, it's the same idea with what I want to do against Lady Geist. Burst her down until she's going to get to the point where she wants to use her ult, then stop her from using her ult with one of your silence actives, and then she dies. And that's it. So that was all the heroes in Deadlock. If you disagree, if you're like, well, actually, Colossus doesn't... Wait. Unstoppable doesn't work against Dynamo ult, then please let me know. Some of these are just game theories. Like, I'm not even lying. I'm not trying to lie, because I haven't gone up against oppressive versions of some of these characters enough, because some of these characters are just not good enough to be played to the point where they're going to get that fed. You know, like, no one's got that dedication at this point, which is kind of fair. So if you disagree, go ahead. Like, I want to know. The whole point here is kind of to get more people to know, so that I have less incompetent teammates. Anyway, if you made it this far, you should be, like, probably a better Deadlock player, you know, because then you'll have all of this knowledge, at least in the back of your mind. You know, and I hope it becomes almost subconscious to see a pocket and go like, debuff remover, done, you know? Anyways, thank you for listening this long, and if you want, subscribe, like button that thing, do the notification thing, and leave a comment. All of those things make my video do more well in the algorithm, and then more people stop being bad at Deadlock. Unfortunately, 90% of Deadlock's player base are terrible. No offense.